I fly a lot for work. Enough that I've stopped paying attention to most of it. The security lines, the safety demos, the plastic cups of ginger ale. It all blends together, just white noise between cities. But this flight? This one burned itself into my memory. It was a simple route, Phoenix to Chicago. Midday departure. Half-full plane. No kids screaming, no weird smells, no drunk guy trying to flirt with the flight attendant. Just uneventful. For the first hour, we were cruising at 36,000 feet, seatbelt sign off. I'd just started a movie when I noticed we were banking, slowly but sharply enough that the skyline shifted out the window. The flight map on the screen in front of me flickered, then froze. I took my headphones off, looked around. No one else seemed alarmed. No announcement, no ding. Just a slow, steady turn. That's when I realized we weren't heading northeast anymore. We were going back. I leaned over to the older man next to me. "Do you feel like we're turning around?" He glanced out the window, shrugged. "Maybe turbulence ahead. They'll say something." But they didn't. 10 minutes passed. No word from the cockpit. The flight attendants were still calm, but they weren't smiling anymore. One of them walked up the aisle, stopped halfway, and turned to face the cabin. She just stood there, watching us. Another one walked down the aisle with a trash bag like it was business as usual, but her eyes kept flicking towards seat 14A. I was in 16F. Close enough to notice. The guy in 14A looked normal. Young, clean-cut, earbuds in, dozing against the window. Nothing strange about him. Nothing that would explain any of this. But something had changed. The air was tighter now. People started whispering. I pulled out my phone, tried to check the flight path on the airline app. No signal, no Wi-Fi, nothing. We were in the air for another 40 minutes before the pilot finally spoke. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're making an unscheduled landing. Please remain in your seats." That was it. No explanation, no apology, no mention of weather or medical emergencies, just unscheduled landing. We touched down at a different airport. I still don't know where. We never saw a terminal. The plane taxied out to a remote corner of the tarmac. No other aircraft nearby. Just an empty stretch of concrete under a setting sun. Then we stopped. And waited. For a long time. Eventually, a black SUV rolled up next to the plane, flanked by two unmarked white vans. The door opened. 4 people in dark clothing boarded. Not TSA. Not local police. Federal. You could feel it. They moved with purpose, not confusion. The one in front scanned the cabin. Walked straight to 14A. The man was awake now, looking around, confused, like the rest of us. "Is something wrong?" he asked. No one answered. They told him to stand up. He did. Then they put his hands behind his back, not roughly but firmly, and walked him down the aisle without a word. No one else moved. No one else was touched. They left as quickly as they arrived. The vans drove off. The SUV followed. The cabin door shut again. The plane didn't move. After 10 minutes, a flight attendant finally broke the silence. "We'll be continuing on shortly. Thank you for your patience." That was it. No questions allowed, no explanations given. We sat in stunned silence until we were airborne again. When we finally landed in Chicago several hours late, the airline had already rebooked connections and handed out generic "we're sorry" vouchers. But no one said anything about what had happened. I asked one of the flight attendants as we disembarked, "Why did we turn around?" She blinked, smiled too quickly. "Oh, it was a mechanical issue. Just precautionary." But that was a lie. Because if it had been mechanical, they wouldn't have let us keep flying on the same plane. When I got to the baggage carousel, a man in a suit was waiting. I didn't see him approach me. He was just suddenly there. He showed me a badge too fast for me to read. "We'd like to ask that you don't share what you saw today online. It may interfere with an ongoing investigation." What was he? What did he do? The man didn't answer, just repeated, "Please don't share." I did anyway. And a week later, I got an envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside, A single piece of paper. A passenger manifest from the flight. All names redacted. All but one. Mine. And written underneath in bold typed letters. You weren't supposed to see this. I didn't know what that meant. Until I looked closer. Under the column marked 14A, no name. Just a word. Classified. We were supposed to be in the air for 6 hours. I didn't even want to be on the flight. Last-minute work trip. Overbooked options. Middle seat. The kind of travel day where you brace for inconvenience but not for actual fear. Takeoff was normal. The crew did their safety demo. Pilot greeted us over the intercom with that practiced, calm voice. Should be a smooth ride. Sit back and relax. I tried to sleep. About an hour in, something shifted. It started subtle, like the absence of something you're used to hearing. No more overhead announcements, no updates about reaching cruising altitude, no beverage carts, not even that first check-in from a flight attendant walking the aisle. I kept waiting. 10 minutes. 20. Nothing. The woman in the aisle seat beside me finally flagged down a passing attendant, but he didn't stop, just kept walking briskly toward the front of the plane, holding a phone to his ear, eyes wide and unfocused like he'd just seen something bad. That was the last crew member we saw. 10 minutes later, a man in the back rang his call button, then another, and another. No one responded. The call lights stayed on. Someone knocked on the galley door near the cockpit. No answer. It started with whispers. Where are they? Is something going on? Then the guy in 5C stood up and walked to the front. Tried the cockpit door. Locked. He knocked. Once, then harder. No answer. He tried shouting through it. Captain, everything okay up there? Still nothing. By now, the whispering had spread like a virus. Passengers were sitting up straight, glancing over shoulders, calling for attendants by name, only to remember they didn't even know them. There was no turbulence, no sign of damage, but something was wrong. The guy from 5C turned around and addressed us all like he was trying to calm the room. I think the crew's dealing with something. We just need to sit tight. Someone else yelled, "What if they're unconscious?" Then another, "What if the pilot's dead?" But the plane was still flying, still on course, still steady. So, who was flying it? That's when panic started creeping in. A woman 3 rows back started crying. A man tried to FaceTime his wife, but the Wi-Fi had cut out. Someone banged on the lavatory door, thinking maybe a crew member was inside. Nothing. Every attempt to contact the front of the plane failed. And then, a sound. A deep, echoing thud from inside the cockpit, like something heavy hitting metal. Then another, and another. Everyone fell silent. A guy stood up and said, "That's not turbulence." People started pushing toward the front, trying to open the door, pounding on it, screaming. Still no answer. Then the intercom crackled. Everyone stopped, stared at the speaker like it was a lifeline. But what came through wasn't the captain's voice. It was breathing, heavy, wet, labored, right against the mic. Then nothing. Dead air. The screaming started seconds later. People demanded to land, demanded someone explain what was happening. A man tried to open one of the emergency doors mid-flight. He was tackled and restrained by other passengers. No crew appeared to intervene, because they were gone. Gone, or hiding. After nearly 2 hours of chaos, someone in the back, an off-duty pilot apparently, forced his way into the rear galley and found the emergency phone to ground control. He spoke fast, panicked, kept saying, "We don't have a crew. Repeat, no visible flight staff. Cockpit is sealed. We need an emergency landing." We still don't know who responded or how fast. But 20 minutes later, the plane began to descend. It was jarring, too fast, too steep. People were vomiting, crying, praying. The oxygen masks didn't deploy. Still no crew. The landing was rough. When we hit the tarmac, we veered into a remote runway and stopped hard. The lights in the cabin flickered. Then nothing. No ground crew approached. No stairs rolled up. We sat, trapped in silence. Then the cockpit door clicked. Everyone jumped. It opened. Slowly. And a flight attendant stepped out. But she didn't speak. Didn't blink. She just walked down the aisle with a 1,000-yard stare, opened the emergency exit, and stepped down onto the tarmac barefoot. The rest of the crew followed, one by one. No shoes, no luggage, just vacant expressions. They walked straight into the open field beside the runway, into the night. None of them looked back. We were debriefed for 6 hours after that. Not allowed to leave. Not allowed to speak to each other. Phones were taken. Luggage scanned. Questions repeated. The airline called it a technical failure. Said the crew suffered a temporary psychological incident triggered by air pressure loss. But here's the thing. Every passenger remembered the same thing. That breathing over the intercom, it wasn't from the crew. And when they reviewed the cockpit audio recordings, there was a 23-minute segment they wouldn't let us hear. Only said it contained content not attributable to human speech. Whatever was in that cockpit, the crew locked themselves in with it, or they were trying to keep it out. We'll never know, because none of them ever spoke again. I don't scare easy. I've been around planes since I was 16, worked baggage, then maintenance, then got certified as a systems tech. I know the hum of a turbine, the rattle of an overworked flap, the groan of a fuselage flexing midair, and I know what a human scream sounds like, even when it's muffled, even when it's coming from 2 decks below. Flight 892 to Salt Lake was a late-night run, lightly booked, mostly business types headed home on a red-eye. I wasn't working. I was flying standby, headed back after inspecting ground systems in Phoenix. Seat 22C, exit row, dead center of the plane. 2 hours into the flight, somewhere over Nevada, I felt it. Not turbulence exactly. More like a shift in air pressure. A momentary drop. Like the plane sighed all at once. Then the sound came. Faint at first. Just beneath the rumble of the engines and the hiss of recirculated air. But rising. Fast. It didn't sound like metal stress or hydraulics. It sounded like something alive. Screaming. Not muffled by steel or insulation. The kind of scream that makes your stomach twist because your brain recognizes it before you even consciously understand what you're hearing. A few people around me looked up. One woman reached for the flight attendant button. Another pulled off her headphones. The sound cut off like a switch had been flipped. No more screaming. Just silence. Then, 30 seconds later, the captain came on. "Folks, we've hit a small pocket of turbulence. Everything's fine. Please remain seated with your belts fastened." That was a lie. There was no turbulence. No shaking. No warning signs on the seatbelt display. I stood up, quietly stepped toward the rear galley, flagged down the flight attendant who looked the least terrified. "I work avionics," I whispered. That wasn't turbulence. She blinked. Tight smile. "Sir, please return to your seat." There was a scream. From the hold. I know where that sound came from. The smile dropped. She stepped closer. "We're aware. The crew is handling it. Please sit down." That's when I knew they were hiding something. Because there's no crew protocol for a scream from the cargo hold. Unless you're carrying something, or someone, you shouldn't be. I got back to my seat, but I didn't relax. My mind was racing. I knew the hold layout. Knew how sound would travel. If something screamed that loud, that clearly, it had to be close to the cabin partition. Maybe stored in the forward cargo near the avionics bay. I opened my airline app, checked the cargo manifest. Nothing unusual listed, but that's standard. High priority or sensitive cargo is often listed as special freight. Still, I filed a note for myself. Time of the incident, coordinates, and I started watching the flight crew more closely. They were moving strangely, avoiding eye contact, avoiding each other. One attendant kept glancing at the galley panel near the floor, a panel that leads to the cargo access chute. You're not supposed to be able to enter the hold mid-air, but on certain aircraft, the latch isn't locked. It's just sealed and rigged with alarms. Unless someone disabled the alarm. Unless they plan to access it. When we landed, I didn't go to baggage claim. I walked straight to the operations office and asked for the aircraft maintenance log. "That plane had a mid-flight pressure variance," I said. "And I heard something come from the lower deck." They asked who I was. I showed my ID. Then they told me I was mistaken. The aircraft pressurization system was nominal. No issues reported. "And the noise?" Blank stares. "You mean the turbulence?" I mean the scream. Their expressions changed. I left before I got escorted out. But I filed a formal report the next morning. 2 days later, I got a call. Blocked number. A voice that didn't introduce itself said, "Withdraw your report." "Who is this?" "The cargo was confidential. You weren't supposed to hear it." "Was it human?" "Do not contact the airline again." Click. I checked the FAA database. That flight was quietly flagged for an anomalous pressure reading. 3 other flights using that aircraft were delayed indefinitely. No public reason given. Then one of my co-workers forwarded me a leaked image. Security footage from the Salt Lake City tarmac. It showed the belly hatch of the aircraft being opened by 2 men in hazmat suits. Inside, a cage. The metal was twisted, like something had forced its way out. No blood, no debris, just claw marks, deep ones. I don't know what was in that cage. I don't know why it screamed. But whatever it was, they never loaded it back in. And that plane, it's still grounded.